Welcome back everybody to NeuroMT. Today we're going to discuss the basic structures of the brain. In the previous videos we mentioned a lot about the lobes. The brain has 4 lobes: parietal, occipital, temporal, frontal. So lobes are basically part of the cerebrum, which is right here, cerebrum. That is one of the largest areas of the brain, and cerebrum has basically it's divided into 2 hemispheres of the brain. You could see that just imagine it as it's been cut into half. So the 2 hemisphere, this is called cerebral cortex. It's the outermost layer of the brain. Cerebral cortex is very simple. It just have gyri and sulci. Gyri is basically the fluid-filled cavities, the folds. Each fold has its own name. And sulci are basically the ridges, the gaps between the folds, and also sulci, each sulci has its own name. That is all happening in the cerebral cortex. On each side of the brain, you would see sulci and gyri, and the cerebral cortex is the one that has 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital, and above cerebral cortex, it's the outermost layer of the brain. As you can see over here, you could see cerebral cortex has the gray matter and the white matter. The gray matter is just this part, the outermost layer, and the white matter is deep inside, which we'll get into later on. So all you need to remember is cerebral cortex is the one that has 4 lobes, and it's the cerebrum, the outermost part of the brain, that is the largest area, and it has 2 hemispheres. Each hemisphere has sulci and gyri, and the gray matter is the part which we call cerebral cortex. So this is all about the cerebrum, which is the forebrain, and it covers the max part of the brain. Then we have, I can point this out, the forebrain here, and then there's a hindbrain right here, and then there's a midbrain here. Midbrain is a part of our brainstem. You can see this is our brain, and this is something like a stem, so it's known as the brainstem. And midbrain is basically the part of our brainstem. So we have forebrain, which covers most of the lobes, and then we have hindbrain and the midbrain, which is a part of the brainstem itself. Okay, so these are the major division, the big picture. The major part of the brain is the cerebrum, which is divided into 2 hemispheres known as cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex has the white matter and the gray matter, and cerebral cortex is the one that has sulci and gyri. So that's the big picture of the cerebrum. Okay, let's move to cerebral cortex. Yeah, this part, the outermost part is cerebral cortex, gyri, and sulci. Okay, as you can see here, the dark part is all our gray matter, which is the cerebrum, and the insides is the white matter, which we'll get into later. Okay, that's all about cerebrum. Now you can see we have thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, and metathalamus. All these thalamus are deep inside the brain, not up there, but deep inside. Let's get into that. Now the brain is divided further into diencephalon. Now diencephalon is what? It contains all the thalamuses. This is the thalamus, This part is hypothalamus, this is epithalamus right here, and this one's the metathalamus. Now you can see we call this part forebrain, this is hindbrain, this is the midbrain. So somewhere in the middle we have all these thalamuses, which we call diencephalon. And the amazing part about the brain is that, as you can see, we have sulci and gyri. So each fold has its own name. We have precentral, postcentral, and this one has its own name. We will get in details later, but what you should know is that brain is divided into two parts. This part is mostly responsible for motor activities, things you do with your hands, and this part is basically responsible for sensory activities. Motor is not just the things you do with your hands, it's just that if you want to see something and move your eyes, this part of the brain is going to be responsible, which is the motor part. But if you wanna, it gives you process the image what you're looking at, that's the sensory part's job. Okay, so this is the center, and all these gyres and sulci are known as precentral, and all over here all of them are known as post-central, because they're after the central line, which is basically an imaginary line for our understanding, of course. So that's all about diencephalon. And this is TL encephalon. TL encephalon here is, you could clearly see the cerebral cortex mentioned before. Cerebral cortex is what part? Yeah, the gray matter part. And these insides are the white matter, but in TL encephalon you can see these, which are basal ganglia and hippocampus. You know, hippocampus is responsible for short-term memory, right? So we have hippocampus on either side because it's like a divided part of the brain. You could see the hemispheres being divided clearly. And for TL encephalon, you just need to remember that it has basal ganglia, hippocampus, and cerebral cortex. These are very miniature structures, and you just need to be familiar with the names. Nothing deep. Functions we will get into later, of course. This is the basic structural anatomy for you guys. So the cerebral cortex, remember I told you that it's divided into precentral and postcentral, right? So now you can see clearly here, this is premotor cortex, and this one is a supplementary motor cortex as primary motor cortex. It's all about the motor activities, which is basically in the precentral cortex. Now here you can see the visual cortex, the somatosensory cortex, the auditory cortex. All these are sensory, and they are in the postcentral part. Alright, so that's all about the largest area of the brain, which is the cerebrum. As a review, cerebrum is the largest area of the brain. It is divided into two hemispheres, and cerebral cortex is in the cerebrum, and it has the sulci and the gyri and the gray matter. And cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of the cerebrum. And in the next video, we will definitely talk about the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the rest of the brainstem. Don't forget that midbrain is also still the part of the brainstem, but it's just there. And we talked about diencephalon and TL encephalon. There we were talking about a lot of thalamus, hypothalamus, and in the other one basal ganglia. So we will get into details later. In the next video, we'll talk about the midbrain, hindbrain, and brainstem, which is very easy. The largest part of the brain is the cerebrum, and that's all you need to remember. And the cerebrum is basically considered to be in the forebrain, which is this huge area right here. And in the later videos, we will talk about each folds and their names, and each ridge and their names. All right, so that's all for today, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.